Hello and welcome to the Week 4 devlog for my HTC Vive Archery game. This week I spent a fair bit of time adding to the game system to make it a more full-featured game like the lab's castle defense, and I've also started experimenting with a new type of transportation system. The way that the transportation system works is you see that we have two new towers that you can move to while you're fighting off the horde attacking your castle. And the way that you do that is you point an empty controller at one of the tower balls above it and push on the thumb pad, and you immediately teleport over to the tower. You can teleport around really easily, and you keep holding whatever objects you're currently using when you teleport. So the one thing that you can't do is teleport using a hand that has an object held, so you can't bring arrows from point to point. You have to have one hand free to use the teleportation system. I've also changed a couple of the particle systems. A lot of people were complaining a bit about the explosion for this the exploding arrow, but everybody seemed to really like the fire effect. So I've changed the particle system on the explosion arrow to use the same type of particles that one does, and I've also added, based on a recommendation, a little tracking particle. So when you shoot this, you can see the arrow is kind of pulsing a bit there. And that's the new particle system. I've added another arrow here that I was very interested in adding the entire time. And this is a kind of flak cannon arrow that you shoot, and after a short delay, it breaks apart into a bunch of smaller arrows. And it works like this. You can see all those little white particles break off and can be used to attack, and they'll all hit the enemies. I've added a door at the base of the castle that has a health bar that you can see, so enemies, when they reach the castle wall, will begin to hit the door and bring down your health. Obviously, if you go to 0, you lose the game. I've added a number of enemies, which we'll see in a second. I've changed the skybox because it had a pretty bad seam, and actually added these clouds that are volumetric clouds, and they kind of move through the sky. They're using the particle system, the same type of particle shader here. And so you get a sense of scale because they are 3D objects. Your parallax vision, you can kind of see where they are above you. They're really big and they kind of feel like clouds. Those are one of the things I needed to do before I release this game to anybody for playtesting or anything like that is a way to get your bow back if you accidentally drop it off the thing, off a tower or the wall, because anytime I've given it to people, somebody accidentally either drops it or purposefully throws it off the tower, and I needed a way to let you get this back without restarting the game. So now if you throw the bow onto the ground and you hold in the grip buttons, you'll teleport the bow to your hand. And that doesn't conflict with this exploding arrow, because to use the exploding arrow, you need to have the bow in your hand. And it works with both hands like that. The other thing that a number of people were asking about, and I just kept forgetting to show, even though it was always in the game, is the fact that if you change hands, the notch is on the other side. And that also means that if you want to have your notch on a different side of the bow for whatever hand you want, that can just be a very simple setting by just inverting which hand gets which side of the bow. So those are kind of the new little features added, and without further ado, I will start the actual game. So we have a full wave system that we're using, just like the lab's archery game, and we also have a number of new enemies. Skeletons that we had from the last game are still all the same, but as we progress through the waves, we'll get new enemy types. The very first one here that we can see coming in from both sides is the zombie, and it's a slow moving but harder hitting enemy, and I'll actually let this skeleton get to the door real quick to show you what happens when an enemy gets to the gate. So as soon as the enemy gets to the gate, it can start attacking the wall, and you'll see these enemies don't really do too much, although in greater numbers they'll start to really pull down the gate. But later enemies will definitely start to do some damage. I've changed the way that damage works for the arrows. Before, if an arrow hit an enemy at all, the enemy would die. Now arrows do damage and enemies have health. If it heads, have special tags on them so that you do double damage if you shoot an enemy in the head. And the enemies that are holding shields, the shields will block the arrows. Let me see if I can hit. Oops. The enemy weapons and shields won't count for. You can see I hit the sword there. These don't count to killing them. The enemies will now drop any items that they're holding instead of ragdoll with the items that they were holding, so they do release their hold on them. Here's another new enemy, and here you can see I hit that enemy. You can see the arrow inside his leg. These enemies require, they're just some free ghoul model, they require a couple more shots. And to make sure that it doesn't feel like you've been cheated, when you hit an enemy, it may feel like you don't know if you missed or not. There's visual feedback, the arrow sticks in them, there's a little bit of a trail still, and the audio is different for when you hit an enemy versus when you hit the ground. More of a fleshy sound. So I'll demonstrate how this new arrow works with some of those guys. You can see that it just kind of rains pieces on them, and for some of the larger enemies that becomes incredibly powerful if you can get them all headshots with one of those arrows. It will kill pretty much anything except for the really biggest enemies. Here we can see a new enemy, and one of the things that was mentioned was the ability to play with scale. So the further enemies along get much bigger because it's pretty easy to play with scale. I happened to shoot 3 headshots into that one, so it died pretty quickly. But a lot of the bigger enemies hit harder and take a lot more shots, as they should. But seeing the big enemies, obviously you don't get a sense of how they feel from watching a video, but it does really feel like they would be towering over you. Obviously, pretty soon I'll need to release a build for people to play with, and I've been trying to work on that. I don't think it'll come out this week, but I think the next week's devlog will likely have a link to a playable build inside it. If we look at our wall, you can see that that bigger enemy took a bit of a chunk out of it. And you'll see how these arrows, I think I may need to tweak a bit because they're pretty overpowered since all of those can get headshots. Alright, so here we'll get to see the final enemy that I've added. just from bad to worse here. This guy, oops. And one of the things to note about those arrows is if it hits something before it shatters, then the shatter won't take place, so you only get the damage of a normal arrow out of it. So it's not really usable for close range attacks. I'm sure you can't get the sense of scale of this creature from just the 2D screen, but it really seems like a towering monstrosity of a creature. You can just see how absolutely titanic he is when you're right next to him, and you can so you can see up there that although it's a little bit dark, there we go, that we lost the castle. This guy really can take it out. This was, I think, a great suggestion by someone adding a really giant creature, because you can kind of walk up to his face even though he's standing 50 feet below you. And it really feels like he's there. If he decides to attack right here, you almost have to move to another area because he's just so in your face, kind of right above the ramparts. In the future, as I said, I think I'll be trying to get a playable demo out to people fairly shortly. I'd love to get some more feedback, especially on things like performance hits, and what else needs to be done. Get feedback on the general system, the bow play. I know a number of people have been using the system that I helped add to the Steam VR input and interaction system on GitHub, but this is a little bit modified version of that. I've adjusted a number of settings to kind of fit to my liking, and I would like to get feedback from everybody on how the bow feels, how the arrows feel, how powerful the arrows are compared to things like the Lab and Hollow Point and those games. If you guys have any other ideas about enemy types, I can't really do the modeling, so I've been using the free assets. I definitely want to add things like siege weapons that come rolling in and need to be hit at a very particular angle to destroy. I just don't really have the assets to use in the game right now. If people know of assets and for that, for free or for much cheaper than what is currently on the asset store, I'd love to see them, because I would like to get more variety in the game. I will try to set up a Steam Greenlight page. I'm not entirely sure what the system is for submitting VR-specific apps to Steam, since obviously they won't get greenlit the same way that other games will, because only a very small percentage of the population has a Vive to play the games on. So if anybody knows what the current system of getting VR-only games on Steam is, I'd love to hear what that is. But that's about it for this week. I'll be working on creating a demo and setting up the Steam Greenlight page this coming week, as well as doing a kind of a performance and optimization pass over the game, because adding all these things has led to a bit of an optimization problem, and I'll probably need to go through and refactor all of my code before I release it to a bunch of people, because the last thing I want people to say about the game is that it's unplayable because of frame rate issues, and kind of not get any feedback on the actual game, only the problems of running it. So that's all for this week. I hope to hear you guys' feedback in the comments and in the Reddit thread. And I will see you guys next week. Thanks.